A very common and oft-heard verse in the Bible, Proverbs 3:5, tells us to trust in God, but there's more to it than just that. If we want to make sense out of trusting God and not some other human characteristic, we need to comprehend what that actually means. So, trusting in God. First of all, let's look at Proverbs 3:5, which says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding." That seems pretty straightforward, doesn't it? Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. Trusting in God with my heart. What does that mean? Oh, we have an idea. I mean, we say a lot of things. We have little phrases we throw out, and then we think we know what they mean. Some of the really classic ones are love. Oh, I love that. No, you like that. Probably really don't love that. And there's different levels of love, and so there's complexities to these things. And you can tell somebody something, and you go, "Do you understand?" They go, "Oh yeah, I understand that." What? Right? Because they don't get it. And so we talk about trusting in God with all of your heart. Well, a few years ago, we spent 52 weeks talking about the heart. All the Bible verses, and there was actually some, we probably didn't get every single one, but pretty close. All the Bible verses that talk about your heart. 52 weeks we talked about your heart. Your heart's complex. Your heart is a place where your emotions are tied. You say, "Oh, that's not true," but I could show you. Your heart, when we say, "Oh, you're heartbroken," someone's they're sad, they're heartbroken. Well, we don't mean their heart is literally broken. Well, that's true, but when you're heartbroken, there's actually an enzyme and things that take place with your heart. It's part of the mix. There is an emotional aspect to your heart. You ever had your heart skip a beat? Maybe you see that woman that's, becomes your wife, and, your heart skips a beat. That's an emotional response on your heart's part. Just saying, your heart is more complex than just the pump for the blood. It has a role that it plays. So if I trust God with all my heart, the implication of that phrase, the implication of that idea is that trusting in God, we would instantly, if we've been in church any length of time, we're going to instantly tie that to faith. Trust in God with all my heart. I have faith in God. Faith is what it's all about. Well, it's an aspect of that for sure. Hard to trust in anything if you have no faith in it, right? So how could you trust in God if you have no faith in God? Of course you have to have faith. Knowledge? Well, it requires knowledge. You have to understand a little bit about God to say I trust in God. You'd have to have a little understanding of what God was about. You don't necessarily have to be a scholar, but you have some idea of what that means to trust in God. Well, I trust that there's a being greater than myself somewhere out there. And well, you can't trust in that. It's not focused. It's scattered. It's who knows what it is, right? You have to have some knowledge of God I trust in God. And of course the 10,000-pound elephant in the room is your emotions. If you trust in God, do you trust in God with your emotions as well? We're talking about W.A.L.K, the acronym W.A.L.K, and directly talking about our walk with God and trying to explain that so we understand what's going on when people say that, what it really means. And we did the acronym: wait, ask, listen. And here I am talking, and you're not hearing the word listen a whole bunch yet. But listening, I've said, is an active process. And if we're going to listen and we're going to learn, it involves understanding. Okay? And so our key verse, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. That's where we're going. If I'm going to trust in God with all my heart, don't I have to trust in God with my emotions too? And you say, well, if I trust in God, what difference does it make? Well, if you say you trust in God, but you're an emotional wreck because you're not trusting God from an emotional standpoint, then you're not going to really be very successful, and you're not really trusting God. If the concept of trusting God somehow gives you a moment of peace, that's good. But if your emotions are still underneath there just tearing you apart, then are you really trusting in God? Or are you trying to convince yourself you're trusting in God, but your emotions are just flying all over ruling the day? If I'm going to trust in God with all my heart, I have to consciously trust God, including handing my emotions over to trust in God. And so that goes back to, and we've said this a few times in the last several weeks, but that goes back to taking every thought captive. That goes back to guarding my heart. That goes back to being in a position where I can say, hey, emotions, you don't get to run with this. I'm trusting God, and you're subject to God as well. We're going to trust in God with all of our heart, the emotional side, the mental side, the spiritual side, the knowledge side. All of it's going to come in line. We're going to trust in God with all our heart, with all my heart. I'm going to trust in God. And then it says, and lean not on your own understanding. Listen, act, hear, all these listening words. At the end of the day, do I understand what I'm listening to? Am I hearing and understanding? And it says, don't lean on, let's be really correct here, and lean not on your own understanding. Well, whose understanding am I supposed to lean on? Okay. Lean on. That would be supported by, be buttressed by, be held up by. What am I leaning on? Am I leaning on the idea that I have all the answers, that my understanding is so complete that whatever the situation is, I can go with my own understanding of the situation, no questions asked? Well, I don't believe that's what it's telling us to do. I think what it's saying is that I need to trust in God with everything. The emotions, the knowledge, I need to trust in God on everything. And not lean on what I've worked out in my own head as the answer. Okay? I'm not saying disregard common sense. I'm not saying disregard those things. But what I'm saying is I need to trust in God. I need to look to God first and have Him be the thing I lean on, not my own understanding of a particular situation. Or I could say not to lean on tradition. Well, we've always done it that way. Right? That's just how it is. And, you know, it's the old story of the lady who was getting ready to do the Christmas ham. And she got out the pot and she cut the ham in 3 sections and laid it into the pot. And her daughter said, Mom, why are you doing that? And she goes, well, we've always done it this way. Grandma's always done it. Go ask Grandma. So she went and she said, Grandma, why do we cut the ham in 3 pieces when we put it in the pot? And she said, we've always done it this way. That's how we do it. Go ask your great-grandmother. So she goes and she says, Great-grandma, why do we cut the ham in 3 pieces when we put it in the pot? And she said, well, I don't know why anyone else does it, but I did it because I couldn't fit it in the pot otherwise. Right? So don't lean on your tradition just because it's tradition. Trust God with all your heart. Well, I have a good gut instinct about this. My gut will tell me what to do. Well, don't lean on your gut. Lean on God. Trust God. Ask God. Listen to God. Let him open up your understanding. Lean on his understanding. Too many times we lean on myself. We lean on what seems right to me. And the Bible says there's a way that seems right unto a man, but the end thereof is destruction. In other words, I'm a self-made man. I'm a self-reliant person. And I'm not trying to tell you to not be able to make decisions or do things. What I'm telling you is your trust, your hope is in God, not in yourself. So, let's see how this plays out as we look further in the verse. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge him, and he shall direct your path. In all your ways, acknowledge him. You know, something happens and it's high fives all around, right? But do we remember his input into the situation? He provided the answer. He helped you with what needed to take place. Do we recognize God's process, God's input, God's overshadowing protection and provision in what's going on, or do we allow the credit to be ours? Boy, Dan, you know, that lesson you taught was so good. You taught that so well. You really, you know, you brought stuff out I never thought of before. It was amazing. Oh, thank you so much. You know, I'm so blessed to be able to do that. I feel great that I was able to help you. Really? How about acknowledging God? You know, it's God. He's the one. He's the source of whatever. So acknowledge him instead of high-fiving everybody. It's nice to be grateful and say, hey, good job, whatever. But let's acknowledge God. Why? Well, it says, if in all my ways I acknowledge him, and it's talking about trusting in the Lord with all your heart and leaning not on your own understanding, acknowledge him in all your ways, and he will direct your paths. So let me ask you this. Your path, is it straight? You're looking down and boy, I got it. Straight ahead. I don't know about you. My path very seldom seems like it's straight. It always seems like there's some blind turn I got to go around. So I don't know what's on the other side and can't really see that sometimes. I laugh when we drive up the hill here, and you know people hate driving over the hill, quote unquote. And there's a certain section there where you look at the GPS and it looks like an intestine, you know, just you know, and so it's far from a straight path. You know, it's curving around. And of course, the GPS is just trying to show you the curves, and it doesn't have the dimension to show you the height. But if you actually sit there and look at it, you're doing this, and you're coming down over the top of yourself, and it is not a straight path. And in life, many times it's not a straight path. There's aspects of our life that are anything but straight. But the word here says that if we trust in the Lord with all our heart, lean not on our understanding, acknowledge him in all our ways, that he shall direct our paths. That he will direct what we don't know about. He will direct what's confusing. He will direct what seems to be going the wrong direction sometimes and running over the top of itself. He will direct that, because my path is not straight. And it says, that he'll direct my path. My path, is your path easy? Because it doesn't say he'll make your path easy. He says he'll direct your path. So sometimes it might be easy, sometimes it might be difficult, but he says he'll direct it. We'll talk about exactly what that means in a minute too, but my path's not easy. I have days that are easy, and I have days that are like, good grief. Am I even going to survive this? This is crazy. My mind's going 900 miles an hour. My body's tired. The phone's ringing. Emails are happening. And then somebody just says the wrong thing. You want to just lose your mind. My path, my days, they're not easy. But when I trust in God with all my heart, including my emotions, I don't just lean on my own understandings, but I believe that God has it under control, and I give him that recognition. God, you got it. You're in control, God. I give him all that. You know what? He directs my paths, and when he directs my paths, they tend to be easier. And then, I don't know, is your path blessed? I mean, have you been in church long enough that, there's all the discussion of all the blessings of God, and there are blessings of God. I'm not diminishing that. But you just think, today doesn't feel blessed. How is today blessed? There goes your emotions again. But here's the thing. When I trust in God with all of my heart, including my emotions, and I don't lean on my emotions for the day, my own understanding of why something may be happening. I don't just focus on that, but I focus on the fact that God is in control of all this. He says he'll make my path straight, meaning he is in control of all that. So I can offload the blessing thing sounds like a good deal. If we could line that up, I would like that, but I'm not going to stress about stuff because I'm giving it all to you, God. Is your path smooth? So what do you mean by that? Well, as you're going along, are you able to kind of get through the dips and dives and smooth it out, and your path is smooth? It's not like this, it's smooth. And if your path isn't smooth, why? Well, so let's look and see if we can find the answer here. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he shall, and it says here, direct your paths. But that word means make straight or smooth. And he shall make your path straight, meaning you can see where you're going. He shall make your path smooth, meaning you can go through the dips and things and it can be smooth. You don't have to be up here and down there and up here and down there. He can make your path smooth. How's he going to do that? I'm going to acknowledge him in all that he does. I'm going to acknowledge that he is the one who's in control. I'm going to acknowledge that he's the one who's the source of blessings. I'm going to acknowledge that he's the one who gives me the wisdom, the strength, the whatever. I'm going to rely on him and not on my own interpretation of the situation or my own understanding. And I am going to trust in God with all of my heart. In fact, I would challenge you to trust in God with every fiber of your being. Trust in God with everything you've got. My path is right. And let me tell you what I mean by that. When I trust in God, when I don't lean on my own understanding, when I truly acknowledge him and let him have control, my path is right because he is right. My path is in sync with him. And when that happens, when I am in sync with God, everything just seems right. I'm not stressing about that. And I don't know about you, but the times when I'm able to be in a situation, church service, whatever, and God uses me to minister to someone, I love that. I love that experience. I love that feeling of God's presence. It's exciting. And when you see what God is doing in others and you see the impact that God is having in their life, that is a great feeling. When I am in that place where I'm acknowledging it's God that's doing things, when I'm in that place where I am not trying to just do it all on my own and I'm going to do this myself, when I'm trusting in God completely with my whole being, things are right and they're smooth and they're straight and I'm not overwhelmed. Why? Because I'm trusting in God. I am taking what I have heard and learned, and I am taking that as becoming what I understand. So I'm not leaning on my understanding, but I'm leaning on the understanding that God has. I'm relying on the experience that God has. I'm relying on the vision that God has. I'm relying on the one who's doing it all in the first place. When I recognize that, it sure takes a lot of pressure off of me. When I understand the God that I serve, the God that is living in me, the God that I'm talking about is in fact the one who created the universe, the one who hung the stars in space, the one who not only understands quantum physics but created them. When I recognize God as truly God, and it blows your mind because it's so far beyond that. I told Pastor the other day, it's a silly thought, but I was sitting there and it just suddenly struck me. And it has to do with the power and enormity of God. But we know that Christ died on the cross for our sins so that we could have eternal life. And I told him, I said, it blows my mind. But it's a simple thought. It suddenly just popped in my head of all the years I've been in church and been a Christian and, studied the word and all that stuff. All of a sudden, it struck me. God used death to defeat death. And I'm just like, that's insane. That's so far beyond what I could comprehend in power. It's crazy. Right? God is in control. Whatever you have going on, God is in control. My philosophy, if you will, for 2022 is this. It's going to be great. Now, I've heard people say, oh, it's going to be bad. And I've heard people say, oh, it's going to be good. And I've heard people say, nobody knows what it's going to be. And You know what? Probably all those things are true. I just know this. God's in control. And the word that I'm hearing from God is I need to trust him. And if I trust him, the understanding of the whole thing comes down to whatever God decides is best is what I want to see happen. And I'm going to take each day, each situation, and I'm going to look to understand from God what he wants done for that day. I'm going to stop trying to trust in my own emotions, trust in my own knowledge, trust in my... I'm not going to put my eggs all in that basket. I am going to trust in God with all of my heart, and I'm not going to lean to my own understanding. In all my ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct your paths. It says, do not be wise in your own eyes. This is verse 7. Fear the Lord and depart from evil. Verse 8. It will be health to your flesh and strength to your bones. In other words, when I trust in God and I lean not on my own understandings and I don't try and figure out how smart I am and I don't, let my motives be messed up, it's actually health to my flesh, strength to my bones. I have better health, is what this says in Proverbs right here. Proverbs is a great book to study, get a lot of these little nuggets out of there. When I trust in God and I acknowledge him and I put him first and I don't lean on my understanding, I do all of that stuff, it's healthy for me. I don't need something. I just need to be close to God. I just need to have God in control. And then verse 9 says, honor the Lord with your possessions and with the first fruits of all your increase. People struggle with this when we start talking about giving and tithing or whatever, but honor the Lord with your possessions and with the first fruits of all your increase. Verse 10, so your barns will be filled with plenty and your vats will overflow with new wine. And you go, wait a minute. Here we go again. You give stuff away to God via the church, whatever, and somehow that's going to cause my barns to be filled. And somehow that's going to cause my store supply to be big enough. Well, it's what it says. You say, well, I don't understand that at all. Right, because then you're leaning on your own understanding instead of trusting in God with all your heart. Trust in God with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. Now, we've got a couple more weeks on this acronym W.A.L.K. And so we're going to find out about the K in W.A.L.K. in our next lesson. In the meantime, listen, hear, act, and understand what God is saying. Don't lean on your own wisdom. Don't lean on your own understanding, but trust in God with all of your heart. And that's it for this week.